Hi! Now we're going to take a look at what adjustment options we have for the live views in Capture, how we can change the brightness, the color behavior, and other options. These properties are all available under the Views category in the Design tab. There is a list of properties here, and they are all available for the three views separately. Now, we're only going to be focusing at the alpha view now, so I'm going to bring the size of this window back down again and take you through the most commonly used properties. We're going to start with exposure. Exposure is basically the brightness of the visualization, and by default it has an automatic exposure enabled. This means that Capture tries to adjust the brightness based on the current lighting of the scene. This is very useful because you will instantly have a good look regardless of whether you have a small stage with weak lights or a large stage with strong lights. However, the automatic exposure also has a tendency to follow crossfades, for instance, so as you dim in and out, it can try to compensate against this. So once you have some lighting in the design, what we would probably recommend is that you then turn off the automatic exposure and take manual control. This is done using the exposure adjustment property, where you can have a slider that lets you adjust the exposure manually from -3 EVs to +3 EVs. EV stands for exposure value. Next, let's take a look at an effect called Uclamp. Uclamp is very useful when pre-programming lights that are facing the camera, as in this case the green LED fixtures on the stage as well as the red fixtures up in the truss do. When you increase Uclamp, you will be locking down the hue of the light to the emitted color of the fixture, which makes it easier to program colors in lights like this. Unfortunately, this is not how digital photography normally works, where bright colors tend to wash out to white. So for a look that is more aligned with what people are used to seeing, turn Uclamp off. But when pre-programming some effects, you may want to increase it or even set it to full for your convenience. The computer screen is quite limited in comparison to the human eye, and this is why this kind of compromise has to exist. Next, we have the bloom effect. Bloom adds a halo around bright spots in the visualization, typically the fixtures. It helps convey a sense of brightness or intensity, and you can simply set it to whatever level you prefer. In situations where you have few fixtures on stage or where you're just working with your design, it can be quite useful to bring up the ambient lighting. This lets you see objects in the visualization even if you're not hitting them with an actual fixture. You can also change the color of the ambient lighting. This is particularly useful if you're simulating outdoor sun lighting using the ambient lighting, because it lets you, change the color so you can make the ambient lighting a little bit warmer or cooler, for instance. I'm going to bring that down again in order to show you the next feature, which is the fill lighting. Now, fill lighting is an effect that simulates indirect lighting. And what happens with fill lighting is that as you're turning fixtures on, there is a small amount of ambient lighting contributing to the scene, which follows the lights you have. This is best seen if we turn up the exposure to max and then toggle the intensity of the ambient lighting. So you can see the lighting up on the curtains here, which is actually yellow lighting coming from the scene, spilling up on the top of stage. So this is lighting that has basically been reflected off the stage floor and is now hitting the ceiling. We call it an effect because it's not perfectly physically accurate, but it does a good job at increasing the level of perceived realism of the visualization. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you make good use of all of these settings.